All right, everybody. Here's the latest in an attempt here to provide some training, some video information for you. We are looking at our latest studio here. This one would be studio number 2, and it is the live on-air studio. That's its function. We can do production in this studio, but mostly it's for doing live shows and operating the radio station. And of course, studio number 1 is the production studio. So we will, as you already have seen, we have training videos about that. And the board is fairly the same. It's exactly the same model as the one in studio number 1, but it's slightly configured differently. So we'll go ahead and deal with that and just kind of cruise around and see what we can see. Alright, so let's see. I think since I'm back here in the room, I will show you the whole studio. Here is our nifty rack full of gear. A lot of this stuff is, you know, the business end of the radio station and some other stuff that we have together. And we've got nifty confidence monitors to tell us what we have here. Of course, you can see as my thing sort of focuses in here that this top one is monitoring the web stream, and of course, you know, we have signals that we're dealing with that. And this is when we put this thing in service. Everything was done in February of 2014. Okay, and then this bottom gizmo down here that we have is the monitor for the air chain. And so we want these things to be lit all the time. That means we're putting out signals. Now later on when we do the LPFM thing, we're going to have additional gear in here too. So there's a couple of extra spaces for that. So anyway, yeah, you guys don't need to worry about that so much, but I figured it's part of the deal, so you want to take a look. And in case anybody asks you what those biggie blinky lights are, they're not monitoring the power levels of the station or showing you acceptable levels of radiation that you can withstand. They're just to make sure that we're still on the air and everything's cool. All right. So you see over here we have a talent support workstation, and its abbreviations, as we'll see when we zoom in here, is TSW, if you can see that in there. But there we go. It's a TSW, which stands for Talent Support Workstation, and we have this machine, which is underneath the counter there. Currently we're using the HP unit, but eventually we're going to upgrade to another unit there. So that's a monitor and the keyboard and mouse for the Talent Support Workstation, and that is a computer that's for your benefit in the studio. As a producer, you can surf the web, check your email if you have web-based email. You can also use Skype, and we can bring Skype into the board, as we'll find out later on when we take a look at the board. Okay, and here we have the automation system. This is basically a simian automation system, and it pretty much keeps the radio station on the air. Everything's pretty low-key with that. And so I'm going to move the monitor a little bit so that we can actually zoom in and show you this nifty gizmo right here. This, of course, is called the multi-port. And they call it a multi-port as I zoom in because you can see that there are all kinds of what we call gazintas and gazatas, and basically ins and outs. That's what we deal with here. So if you have an auxiliary device that you want to use, you can use the patch cables that we provide, or you can, as we look in here, you can plug all kinds of stuff. You can plug RCA jacks in there. You can plug a 1/8" stereo jack, and of course there's 2 analog or digital XLR plugs. So you can use all kinds of good stuff with that. And then as you can see, we have different things. Let's see if we can't get this thing to zoom in a little bit more. Sometimes it has trouble. I was going to read you the labels. Line outputs, I don't think those are connected yet, but we'll have to take a look and see. I'll have to do some testing on them. Then we have digital IOs, ins and outs, pretty nifty. And then of course What do we got here? We have some mic outputs which we are not connecting. So a lot of this stuff is yet to be dealt with, but at least you've got capability in case we need it. Now this is hooked up. We have a Cat5 with DHCP, so you can plug your computer directly into that port and make use of the internet. And we also have a USB port here, and that goes to the Talent Support Workstation. So if you have material that you want to play from your flash disk, you can do that by plugging that into the USB slot and then bringing a Winamp or something like that up on the Talent Support Workstation. So we're going to show you more about that maybe in a later training video, how to make use of different functionalities that the Talent Support Workstation has. Alright, and of course new mic booms with the cool Sennheiser shock mount. And then of course we've got the nifty Sennheiser windscreen, so that's all fine and good. And we have two cool JBL speakers. Those things are pretty slick, and man, they sound great, audiophile quality. Alright, so let's take a look at one thing that we do need to do here is get soundproofing, because we're still contending with people being noisy in production, but everything will take care of itself eventually. So let's take a look at the board here, and you'll remember that this is fairly similar to the one in studio number 1. So we'll take a look. Channel assignments. Channel number 1 is mic number 1, which is always the announcer's mic. Channel number 2 is mic number 2, which is, I will zoom out here and we'll show you what we got here as we pan right across the studio. Here's mic number 2, and it's for the talent position. Now, one thing I want to stress, when you're using the microphone and the boom, you want to move the boom and grab it at the mount here or at the top end of the shock mount. Don't grab the mic body. And do not stress the, as we zoom in here, do not stress the shock wiring that you can see right in here. So you don't want to grab the mic by its body. You want to just use either the boom or the shock mount itself to move the microphone around. Okay, and important. I'm seeing a lot of people messing with our new mic booms, and they're doing this. See, this is not the acceptable way to use the microphone boom. Not good. Okay, what it ends up doing is it springs the spring here and stresses it and makes it less springy, and of course that makes it less usable. You don't want to do that. So I don't know, right now I'm going to do the video here, but eventually I'm going to have to put some signage on here to keep people from doing that. This is what you want to do here. Anytime you need to move the microphone and place it down, you know, go ahead and do this kind of thing. You can see that it actually goes to the position where the talent is, and it can stay nice and congruent, or the way it's supposed to be. This is how these things are supposed to be. So don't bend them backwards. That's not cool. So anyway, these are nifty OC White booms, professional grade, and we want them to stay that way. Alright, so let's go back to the board here. As we zoom in, as we review here, channel 1 is the main announcer's mic. Channel 2, excuse me, channel 2 is mic number 2. Channel 3 is turntable 1. Channel 4 is turntable 2. Channel 5 is CD number 1. Channel 6 is CD number 2. Channel 7 is CD number 3. Channel 8 is the Talent Support Workstation, abbreviated TSW. Channel 9 is the auxiliary input from the multi-port. Channel 10 is the submixer. And we will look at the submixer and all that stuff too. So anyway, board, fairly self-explanatory. Top rows should be not lit, or should be off, because that's the A-B switch. Right now they're selecting the A input, which is what we use. And then you may be able to see that all of the top rows of each of the assigns are designated into program outputs. We don't use Audition very much in this studio. We never use mono or pre. And of course you may use the Q input depending on what you want to do. Q send anyway. Alright, so that's the deal, and those are the dynamic sections, the fader sections of the board. And of course the very bottom are the keys, and they are on and off switches. Red being on, yellow being off. There we go. So now that's all good. Now let's take a look at the monitor section. And you'll see that we have 3 knobs right here. Those are the control room volume, which is abbreviated CR, the headphone volume, HDPN, and the studio volume, which we do not use. So don't worry about that. And as you can tell, this is in a normal configuration. All your volumes and all your faders are down, and that's the way you want to leave the board when you get done with it, and that's the way that you should expect that it should be when you come into the studio. So here we go. Monitors, main monitors, headphone output, and then over here, this is the Q volume, okay? And the Q volume controls the speaker on the upper right-hand corner. Also, too, if something is in Q, you'll see that there is a little light right here. Oops, as we go out of focus here. You can see there's a light that flashes, or not flashes, but it illuminates, and that lets you know that something over here has been set to Q. And since Q takes over from your headphones, if you got something in here that's accidentally pressed in Q, and it's a channel that we're not using, for example, you won't hear anything. See, there's nothing on this channel, and if you accidentally hit it into Q, it will take over from program audio going through your headphones, and you won't hear anything at all. So just be aware that Q does take precedence over program audio in your headphones. Okay, let's look at the monitor. In this studio here, you will almost always see the external 1 setting on the board here, and that's EXT1 external 1, and it stands for air. That's the air monitor, and that's important. You want to leave it like that so we can always be keeping tabs of what's going on with the radio station. It's different than the production studio. Production, you keep it over here in program, but in the on-air studio, we want to leave it in air because that's important. We want to hear what's going on the air. All right. Your headphone output, as you will see shortly, can be accessed on the lower right-hand corner of the board, and you can kind of see that headphone output right there. Now that's just for single operators. Okay, if you're the only operator in the studio and you don't have any guests or anything like that, you can just use that headphone output and be all happy. But as we pan right, you'll see this box here on the lower side of the of the rack to the right of the board. That's a headphone amplifier, and what that actually is, it takes the output of the program channel and it splits it into 4 outputs so that your guests can have headphones. And this is not affected by any switching that's not on the board because we feed this with a program DA. So the audience or the guests will actually hear program audio, and they won't be distracted by any work that you're doing on the board. So as we kind of zoom in here, this may be not copacetic, but we'll take a look and see. We're going to zoom in a little bit, and you can kind of see that we have 4 of these bays. Now on the lower, let's make sure I'm doing what I'm doing. Let's see if I can zoom in there and we can kind of see. It's probably not going to work. I should probably get the telephoto gizmo going here, but all right. So let's see. Lower right is the volume. Lower left is the balance. It should be in the center. Upper left is your bass, and upper right is the treble. And then, of course, on the far left, the headphone port is where you plug in your headphones. That's in the lower left-hand corner of this bay. And then above that, you have 3 buttons, either to look at or listen to the left only, the right only, or a mono combination, mono mix. So that's kind of how that works. You gotta, most of the time, if you leave all 3 buttons up, it'll be a stereo headphone output, and that's all you're gonna need. And then here we have the master output that you don't even need to mess with. So it's gonna be set the way it wants. And then the rest of these are independently controlled. And then headphone position number 1 over here. Let's see, is this right? It's either 1 or 4. I'm not quite sure what we got. But anyway, headphone position number 1 also goes to the guest headphones. So what we're going to do is show you that position right now. Okay, here is the talent position, or your guest. And then as you zoom in, you can kind of see that that's where they can plug in their headphones really nice and easily. And it is labeled accordingly. So you should be able to see, there we go, guest headphones. So that's pretty self-explanatory there. And of course we have turntable 2 and turntable 1 right next to it on the left as we go and examine the CD players and the other gear in the rack here. Let's talk about the CD player since we're looking at them. These are Denon CD players, and CD number 1 is the single unit up on top. Okay, so CD 1 is there. CD 2 and 3 are the tandem units below. And the transport controls for the CD unit, pretty self-explanatory here. Play, fast forward, rewind.